Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're actually looking at a little bit more of a pricey title called Umurangi Generation. And I know I don't normally go above the $5 to $10 price range, but when a dev throws you a code for a game like this, I mean, you kinda wanna play it. And I'm happy to say this one will probably blow your flippin' minds, because it actually encompasses art and passive storytelling, all while being completely helplessly in the face of utter chaos and global destruction. And this is done, as we're already moving into the story portion of the review, without saying a single word. The story in Umurangi Generation is completely passive. It is an implicit story that's spelled out through the characters' perception of their own environments just as they continue playing the game. And though there are some pieces of written language, whether that's graffitied on a wall or a billboard or printed on a sign or a poster, there is absolutely no dialogue between characters, there's no cutscenes, there's no movie footage or montage. Quite literally, the only thing you'll be doing is wandering around the gaming environment, snapping photos. But there's just so much more to it than that I really wanted to get in and review this game, even though it is, again, a little bit higher price than I normally put on this channel. As far as the actual gameplay is concerned, though, the entire world in Umurangi Generation is divided up over about 8 levels, but if you beat the game, there's also some DLC included, which makes me at least personally hope for a future release of more downloadable content. But throughout these 8 areas, wherever you are, you'll be exploring your environment with a few actual explicit objectives of certain types of photos to take. And you can consider this kind of like you've agreed to a contract where you're going to capture X amount of photos and deliver them to a drop-off point. And while there is absolutely nothing that should bind you to any specific mission in the game, this one does have a 10-minute window. But it's not like the game is just going to be over and the level's going to end with a big stamp of failure on it. You just won't get some of the unlockable bonuses that you could get if you managed to finish all of the objectives within the allotted amount of time. And so while there is a bit of time pressure, there's really no pressure at all, because the entire game isn't just focused on achieving those objectives and the other objectives, such as recapturing a postcard photo as close to humanly possible, or getting some kind of candid photos of your own friends group, but you'll also be making money, or possibly even losing a little bit of money, no matter what photos you take, because you're not graded on some sort of perfect visualization or any actual explicit type of art style. Which is a huge credit to the game, because the entire purpose is for player exploration of not only the levels, but of themselves and what they find to be artful. Now, that being said, the experience does get exponentially more complicated, not only the further you get into the game, but the more camera attributes you manage to unlock. Getting your hands on a telephoto lens might now actually require you to use it for certain mission objectives. But other than different type of lenses, which might put you in a pretty tricky situation trying to meet some of these photo objectives, you'll also gain different filters or different ways to manipulate your photography. And being an avid fan of photography myself and using a DSLR camera, by the time you get toward the end of the game, it's almost like using the real thing, because it gets pretty complex and fairly complicated. Throughout the course of your gameplay, though, photography might not only get more difficult and more complex because of different lenses and filters you might be required to use, but because the environments in the game are constantly changing around you, and as there's only 8 levels to play through, I don't want to give away too much, but trying to hunt and find specific photo objectives causes the player to really experience the entire scenario of the game. Because trying to capture that perfect photo to achieve the mission in such a small closed environment really will cause you just to explore the level itself to get the perfect perspective to actually make that possible. And this is where you might actually start really experiencing the visuals of the game. Because it's not just about the colors and the lights and the environments, it's about perspective, and not just perspective from your physical perspective on the item you're trying to capture through your camera, but with all the hidden things you're eventually going to stumble across that give you a perspective on your actual situation or the state of the world that you're in. And so in that sense, the visual dynamics in Umurangi Generation are kind of beyond parallel, even if the Switch itself can't quite handle the frame rates. And if you were wondering, yes, this game actually is available on other systems such as PC. And so if you are a stickler for the frame rates, that might actually be a better experience. Other than that, though, the music it's pretty awesome. Not only is it well suited for the game, but I grew up discovering audio soundtracks on games like Wipeout, Back for the PS1, back when you could actually put a video game into a CD player and use it as its own soundtrack. And considering the fact that I honestly couldn't count the number of tracks through my single playthrough, I'm thinking there's probably a lot, which is a really good thing that we're going to touch on just a little bit later, actually, in the critiques or the further mentions in the game. One of the first critiques for Umurangi Generation is actually, again, kind of a trend with indie games, is its length. And this is something you're definitely going to want to take note of if you're already kind of questioning the native $24 price tag. And just to be painfully honest, Umurangi Generation isn't exactly a very long game. But with all of the unlockables to actually enhance your gameplay, such as more attributes or more filters or lenses for your camera, and the constant time pressure to actually achieve all of these really difficult photo objectives or other objectives like finding film canisters, all within that 10-minute window, well, it's probably going to take you several playthroughs through each level to actually get it if you are one of those kind of 100% completionist gamers. And considering the unlockable DLC and hopefully a promise of future downloadable content, that combined with the massive audio soundtrack portfolio of the game does mean that there will be, at least for certain players, a fair bit of replayability. Which means that even though the storyline might not take you more than a couple of hours, actually getting the full experience of everything that's available in the game might take you much, much longer. Another consideration for Umurangi Generation would be the fact that this isn't like an action game. There's no fighting, there's no combat, and even though you may or may not find yourself in a combat zone somewhere in the game, you as the player do not take any part in it. You have no way to interact or defend yourself other than through the lens of your own camera. Which, actually, as a former military member myself, makes me think of battlefield photography. Your camera literally is your weapon because the photos you send back home can change the tide of the entire war. But that's neither here nor there, but it is something to expect. There's not really a huge focus on combat or anything else but taking photos, which does also mean that you might notice the controls are a little bit floaty. That being said though, in reference to the PC version of this game offering higher performance, one thing that the Switch offers is touchscreen input, as well as the ability to physically turn your Switch to manipulate your camera and your perspective. And so that, in my mind, actually makes the Switch a much better platform. But again, if you're into the frame rates, possibly PC. But other than that, I'd have to say I absolutely had a really, really great time with Umurangi Generation. It was a very unexpected experience, and even though I did actually have Jet Set Radio as one of those original marketing free games that I got when I bought my PS1, while the feel is certainly similar, this is a message and a narrative that was hand-picked for right now. And so much more than the iconic retro throwback that I got to experience visually and auditorily, I got to experience a really cool message. But anyway, that does about bring us to the end of the review of Umurangi Generation now for the Nintendo Switch. So if you did enjoy the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a comment or a like, show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. Because as you can see, there are new and unique indie games coming out literally every single day. And so whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, chances are you're going to find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.